Danny Phantom is a show that can best be summed up by the sentence, great ideas, but very flawed execution. There are certainly a lot of examples of this, the abandonment of ghosts actually being dead humans, and the unfulfilled promise of Walker as a major recurring villain being ones that quickly come to mind, but I struggle to think of any that fulfill that description better than the character arc that Valerie Gray goes through over the course of the show. Valerie is introduced early on in the show, and despite having a pretty short list of appearances throughout Danny Phantom's run, the argument could be made that her role as an anti-hero for Danny is the most important role played by a human in the show outside of Sam, Tucker, and Jazz. Unfortunately, in a show with a lot of characters who don't get to live up to their potential, Valerie gets the worst disrespect out of all of them, and that disrespect is there from the very start. It's honestly not that relevant to the larger point of the video, but it annoyed me enough when rewatching the show for this video that it needs to be brought up regardless. In the second episode of the show, the school is getting ready for a big dance, and Tucker is shooting his shot with any and every girl that he can aside from Sam. We get introduced to Valerie as the literal last girl in school that Tucker hasn't asked out yet, despite her apparent status as one of the popular girls. He tries to ask her out, but gets rejected before he can, as she already has a date, and unless that somehow changes, there's no way she's going with him. Immediately after this, her date runs up and tells her that a different girl said she'd go to the dance with him, and he dumps her without a hint of guilt. Disappointed, she says she'll go to the dance with Tucker. Later in this episode, Danny realizes that Sam feels bad about not having a date to the dance and possesses Tucker, forcing him to ask her out to go with him instead of Valerie. She says yes and the two go together, and we don't see Valerie at all for the rest of the episode. She's not at the dance, Tucker doesn't call her up, nothing. Our introduction to Valerie is her getting stood up to the same dance by two people. This sucks, and we haven't even gotten to her actual story arc yet. Like I said earlier, Valerie is presented as one of the popular kids when the show first starts focusing on her. This is shown to be primarily due to her wealth from her father's job as chief of security at Axion Labs. He's giving a demonstration of the facility's defenses when Danny Phantom and a ghost dog later named Cujo show up and prove the defenses to be worthless, causing her father to lose his job and the family to be left destitute, breeding a deep distaste for ghosts in Valerie. Predictably, Valerie loses her popularity at school alongside her family's wealth. She has no one to lean on for emotional support, which Tucker takes as the perfect time to ask her out. And he's not the only person trying to take advantage of her newfound vulnerability. After school, Val receives a package full of ghost hunting gear, courtesy of Vlad Plasmius, the main villain of the show. Ghost hunting gear that she immediately tries out on Danny the next time he's trying to manage Cujo, who turns out to be much less dangerous than he initially seemed. She's a bit clumsy with her new weaponry, but she's surprisingly adept with it, even for a first time. She also decides to take up Tucker on his desperate flirting when he mentions that Danny's parents are ghost hunters themselves, making Valerie a significant pressure on both sides of Danny's life. Finally, Danny realizes that whatever Cujo keeps coming back to Amity Park for, the answer lies at Axion Labs. He brings the ghost dog to the facility in order to find what he's looking for and put him to rest, unaware that Valerie is waiting with her father in the hopes that she can get her revenge on Danny for ruining her life. The two briefly clash until Cujo gets involved trying to protect Danny, but he manages to save her from the dog and send him back to the ghost zone. Danny tries to convince her that everything that's happened between them until now was a misunderstanding and that ghosts aren't all bad. She refuses to believe him, and as he flees, she swears to get revenge on Danny Phantom and all ghosts, having no idea that he's also the classmate she's trying to get closer to. As far as introductions go for rival characters, this is a really solid one. Valerie has a real motivation for wanting to do away with the ghost presence in her home, which puts her at odds with our hero. This tension is made worse both by her starting to take notice of his civilian persona, as well as his arch-nemesis taking advantage of her and giving her the tools to fully realize her capabilities to fight Danny. But frankly, that's half of the problem. It's a very solid foundation that the show doesn't take advantage of nearly to the extent that it should be. Valerie doesn't make a single appearance in the show after this point, until the next episode focused on her. I don't think that Valerie necessarily needed more of the episodes to be dedicated to her and her relationship with Danny. She was never intended to be a main character, and I think that even with the short episode list, her arc is genuinely compelling. The issue is that if she's not important to the narrative being told, she's not there at all. No cameos and crowd shots, no scenes with her fighting ghosts, just nothing. For every episode that's focused on Valerie, there are 2 that her absence from is strongly felt, and in my opinion, actually damages her character. But I'll get into that later on. The next time we see Valerie is in the episode Life Lessons, close to the end of Season 1. Another of Danny's recurring villains, the ghost hunter Skulker, comes to Amity Park to once again try and capture Danny, but realizes that Valerie is very promising prey as well. Unsure of which of the 2 he should try and hunt, he decides to force their conflict to a conclusion, and whoever wins will have the honor of dying by his hand. On the school side of things, Danny and Valerie have been forced to work together on the classic flour sack baby project for health class. Danny feels that Valerie has been shirking her responsibility on the project and forces her to carry her weight. Seeing that the baby is important to both of the vigilantes, Skulker uses it as bait to capture both of them and bring them back to his lair in the Ghost Zone. He's decided that rather than forcing them to fight and hunting the winner, he'll just hunt both of them at the same time, forcing them to stay together by way of ectoplasmic handcuffs that also keep Danny from making use of any of his powers. Valerie manages to get them off the island, and they have a bit of a heart-to-heart where she reveals that she not only goes to school and hunts ghosts, which she considers to be a job, but she alludes to having a second job, shocking Danny and making him realize why she pushed more of the work with the baby onto him. Speaking of the baby, the duo realizes that Skulker still has the flour sack, and if they want to get it back and get themselves free of the cuffs, they need to go back and beat him at his own game. They manage to put aside their grudges for long enough to incapacitate him, getting the keys and the baby away from him and escape. Valerie admits that while she still doesn't trust him, there might be more to Danny Phantom than she initially thought. He flies her back home and finds out that her second job was wearing a mascot outfit for the local fast food place, and that she was the person he had treated rudely earlier in the episode. He changes back to his human form and apologizes for giving her a hard time, while she apologizes for the damage that came to the flour sack. The episode ends on him taking a shift for her so that she can have some time to herself, and while they aren't friends, the 2 have come to understand each other a bit better than they had previously. This episode is Valerie's final appearance in Season 1, and before moving on to Season 2, I want to talk about the issue I have with her absence that I mentioned earlier. As Valerie gets more comfortable with her gifted weaponry and her skills as a ghost hunter develop, her absence is felt more and more when larger threats come to town. An army of ghosts attack Amity Park and reveal the truth about ghosts to the wider public, simultaneously framing Danny as public enemy number 1. Valerie, who knows about ghosts already and has an established mistrust of Danny, doesn't get involved. A ghost invades the school and begins to abduct students after infecting them with ghost powers. Valerie brings her weapons to school every day but is nowhere to be seen. Vlad Masters declares a $1 million bounty for whichever ghost hunter can capture Danny Phantom. Valerie, who is desperate to return to her rich girl status and who already has an understanding of how to fight Danny, doesn't try to take the bounty for herself. There are excuses you could make for her not appearing in specific episodes that are legitimate enough. The first and biggest that comes to mind being the story for that episode just didn't have room for her in it. And while that's fine for an episode here or there, it doesn't excuse her absence on the whole. Going through the episode list of the first 2 seasons, there are more episodes that Valerie probably should have been in than there are episodes that she actually is in. Characters like Star and Quan get to be part of the action more often than Valerie does, and when Valerie is a major driving force for the second season of the show, it's a problem that side characters feel like more of a constant presence than her. The next Valerie-centered episode is Rainstorm, a 2-parter that sees her, Danny, and Vlad team up to protect the Earth from the King of the Ghost Zone, Pariah Dark, who Vlad woke up in a misguided bid to gain more power. Shortly after Vlad's defeat and desperate flee to Amity Park, we see Danny hide under a lunch table to get away from Dash, only to realize that Valerie is also hiding from people under there. With nothing to do but wait until they lose their pursuers, the 2 begin to bond and form a real friendship outside of their rivalry. They, along with Sam, return to the Fenton Works and find Vlad scheming to steal the technology Jack and Maddie are working on, and he eagerly greets Valerie, although before he can elaborate on how he knows who she is, a massive invading force from the Ghost Zone arrives. Danny runs off to face the invasion, and Valerie attempts to as well, but realizes that her ghost hunting gear has been taken by Vlad, who encourages her to take a walk with him before revealing that he made it for her. He calls her the most capable ghost hunter that he's ever seen, and gives her a ring he stole from Pariah Dark, making her promise to keep it a secret. He's obviously manipulating her in this moment, but he does believe it to an extent, and says as much later on in a moment where it doesn't benefit him to be lying. Meanwhile, Danny is confronted by every ghost he's ever faced, desperately trying to escape the Ghost Zone as the old king is conquering everything and nowhere is safe for them. Danny tries to get more information out of them, but old habits die hard and the ghosts swarm him before flying off. He spends the next night trying to rein them back to the Ghost Zone with no luck, and the next day at school he fends off an attack from Dash with Valerie's help. Noticing the growing friendship, Sam and Tucker warn Danny against letting her get too close to him, which he counters by saying they're overprotective. Once Danny's left, dragged away by Vlad, Valerie confronts Sam on her own feelings for him and says that if she doesn't confront those feelings soon, someone else will beat her to the punch. There's no time for either girl to make their feelings known, however, as the reason for Vlad ambushing Danny is made clear. Pariah Dark's army has made its way to Amity Park looking for his reign. Danny agrees to work with Vlad on fighting them off and manages to convince Valerie to do the same, but before they can defeat Pariah's second-in-command, the Fright Knight, he declares the town to be the property of Pariah Dark and traps the town inside an ectoplasmic dome. With the first part of Rainstorm completed, the pieces continue to move into place. Danny and Valerie have gone from having something of a mutual understanding to genuinely caring for one another, with Valerie even acknowledging that her feelings for Danny may be more than platonic. Vlad recognizes this and begins to use Danny's feelings to his own advantage, and Danny has even managed to bridge the gap between their alter egos just a little bit further, from working together in order to survive to working together in order to protect the town. Since it's a two-parter, I can't comment on the show between Valerie episodes this time, as the next time we see her is the next episode. That said, this episode does serve to highlight some of the issues I've mentioned earlier on in the show. Vlad refers to Valerie as a prodigy ghost hunter, both to her face and behind her back. And while she clearly has taken to the job quickly, we've already seen that she wasn't exactly a natural at it. For her to have gotten skilled enough that Vlad Plasmius, a man who's been using his ghost powers for 2 decades, can genuinely acknowledge them, it doesn't make any sense for her to have only been using her ghost hunting gear in the episodes that we see her in. This leaves us with the question that I keep alluding to. Why is Valerie completely absent from any episodes where she wasn't one of the focal characters? It's clear that Valerie was originally conceived as a character of significant importance to the story of Danny Phantom, and yet when it's not her specific storyline that's being developed, she just isn't there. Admittedly, because of how the show is structured with relatively few characters undergoing their own arc, there's not many characters for me to contrast her against, but as an example, Jazz has her own arc of thinking Danny is immature and failing to apply himself, discovery of his secret identity and trying to support him when she thinks he's in over his head, and ultimate acceptance that he's able to take care of himself, and while she is going to provide assistance when he needs, she'll also leave him to handle things himself when he doesn't need her. It's a solid arc that Jazz undergoes from the first episode to the last, but more importantly, when her arc isn't being developed, she's still allowed to be a part of the show. There are episodes that aren't relevant to Jazz's story where she's just around watching things unfold. Maybe it'll acknowledge her knowing who Danny Phantom really is, but the episode isn't about that. And yet Jazz is allowed to exist in these episodes where Valerie just isn't. Picking back up in part 2 of Rainstorm, Valerie rushes in to attack Fright Knight and is badly injured, to Danny's horror. Fright Knight warns that if the ring isn't returned, the town faces its final days and retreat, and Valerie is brought back to the Fenton residence where Sam and Tucker notice the ring on her hand. The two promptly tell Danny, who immediately understands that Vlad must be using her to hide it from the Fright Knight and Pariah Dark. He tracks down Skulker to get answers about Pariah, and once he realizes how dangerous he is, Danny demands Vlad retrieve the ring from Valerie at once. A fight ensues, and Danny unwittingly summons Pariah to Amity Park, but before he can do any serious harm to the two of them, Valerie arrives to save them. The ring is revealed during the fight, and she tosses it into the Ghost Zone in order to buy time for their escape. It's not enough time, however, as the Fright Knight manages to injure Valerie on her way back home, which Danny blames himself for. Danny declares that saving the town from Pariah Dark is his responsibility, but evidently Valerie feels the same way, as Danny catches her trying to sneak out of the Fenton Works again in order to protect everyone, and he has no choice but to reveal her secret identity to her father in order to stop her from leaving. Valerie shouts that Danny Phantom is dead for what he's done to her, and he runs off with the Fenton Ecto suit to face Pariah on his own. He officially reveals himself to the town as a superhero as he does so, and after a difficult battle, and with some self-serving help from Vlad, Danny is able to lock away the Ghost King once again, and he's praised as a hero by the majority of the town, with one notable exception being Valerie, who still harbors suspicions over his real motives. Valerie also makes her feelings for Danny's human half known, as the next day she walks up to Sam at the Nasty Burger and admits that she is interested in him, calling back to her previous warning at the start of the two-parter. Valerie's characterization continues to be handled very well in this episode, with her feelings for both halves of Danny reaching conflicting extremes. Her feelings for Danny Fenton have grown from distaste to respect to friendship and now to romantic attraction. In contrast, up until this point, Valerie had been developing something of a begrudging respect for Danny Phantom, from assuming his apology was a trick to being willing to fight alongside him against a common enemy on multiple occasions. But with this episode's conclusions, she seems to be more convinced than ever that he can't be trusted and that he needs to be dealt with for the good of her home. While this might seem like a strange turn for her to take, it does actually make sense with the proper context. He showed up inside the anti-ghost dome without any explanation, revealed her as a ghost hunter to her father, thus limiting her ability to fight the monstrous threat Amity Park faces, and seemingly stole the Fenton's newest and most dangerous technology for his own use. Ironically, something that the main villain of the show did do in the end. Looking at things from Valerie's point of view, it does very much seem like Danny Phantom is a villain posing as a hero, and she thinks she needs to be ready for the other shoe to drop. The next time we see Valerie is in another two-part episode, Ultimate Enemy. At least, technically, we see Valerie in this episode. It's not the Valerie we've been watching develop over the course of the show, but a potential future version of her. We see Amity Park set 10 years in the future, with Valerie and her father having been its primary defenders for the past decade, specifically defending from some new mysterious threat that manages to lay waste to the town despite their precautions. This threat is eventually revealed to be Danny's future self, now fully a ghost after a lot of complicated nonsense that frankly doesn't hold up to too much scrutiny, and honestly isn't terribly important for this video. Danny and his friends arrive in this doomed future, and at first Valerie tries to kill him, but once she realizes he isn't yet the Danny she's been at war with, she briefly teams up with him again to stop his future self. As she's knocked unconscious, she mutters to Danny that she had almost forgotten how cute he was when they knew each other. And that's Valerie's presence in this story. It's not a lot. I believe it's primarily there to let Danny realize that Valerie has feelings for him so that his own feelings blossoming in future episodes feel less abrupt, but she doesn't serve much purpose in this specific conflict, as neither her present nor future selves are actually involved in defeating Danny's future self in the end. That said, her appearance, however brief, does give us some very interesting insight into how strong Valerie's feelings for Danny actually are, or at least how strong they'll become. From her perspective, Danny killed all of his loved ones and plunged Amity Park into darkness. With all of its old defenders gone, she had no choice but to become its hero, protecting from the threat she always knew to be a villain masquerading as a savior. For 10 long years, she suffered under that burden with help only from her father, until one day, that villain came back and destroyed everything, wasting every moment of effort she had put into keeping her home safe. Then she's brought face to face with the younger version of this monster, and on some level, seems to realize that if she killed him here and now, she could avoid the awful fate she's been put through. Despite all that, she doesn't. She can't bring herself to hurt the boy she once cared so deeply for, even if it would stop so much suffering before it could ever start. The level of affection required for someone to make that choice can't be understated. Looking at the next episode, Flirting with Disaster starts with Sam and Tucker hanging out in the mall when Valerie and Star show up at the table next to them. Star makes fun of Danny only for both Sam and Valerie to jump to his defense, and shortly after, Danny Phantom crashes into their lunch table during a fight with Technus. Valerie ends up getting hurt in the crossfire, which sends Danny into a rage, something that Technus quickly notices and takes advantage of before escaping into Valerie's phone, ready to join Vlad as one of Danny's villains who manipulates Danny's feelings for Valerie. Later on at a school tour of Axion Labs, Val's dad pulls Danny aside to have a talk about his friendship with Valerie, warning him to keep all the ghost business away from her. At the same time, she wanders off into a supply closet and is locked inside by Technus, who then activates her ghost hunting gear to create a distraction by attacking the students while he tries to hack into Axion's supercomputer. Later that day, he sends the two instant messages posing as each other, leading to the two chatting all night and getting even closer. The two meet up at school and start to hang out, all the while Technus pushing the two deeper and deeper into their mutual infatuation. Sam and Tucker try to confront Danny about this, but he refuses to believe it, and Valerie overhears him say that he wants to be with her before leaving to go and find her. Sam realizes that Valerie might overhear them talking about Danny's alter ego and pretends to be willing to befriend her if that's how Danny feels. And Valerie is so moved she gives Sam a hug. While trying to find Valerie, Technus controls her suit to attack Danny. He runs away to find a place to transform and Valerie sees him. Horrified, she searches her bag to find some way to defend him, and when she can't, she just picks up a tree branch to use as a makeshift weapon. She attacks the suit and Danny takes the opportunity to go ghost and save Valerie, just as the suit was about to finish her off. Enraged, Danny decides not to hold back and destroys Valerie's ghost hunting gear while she watches from the side. Valerie picks up the remains of her suit and looks up at Danny, a defeated look on her face. She believes that Danny Phantom was trying to kill her, all her worst fears about him confirmed in her mind. At home, Tucker and Sam explain Technus' plan to Danny, but he can't stop thinking about Valerie and how devastated she looked. His father comes in and demands that he and Danny have a painful father-son conversation. He says he knows that Danny has a girl he's been wanting to ask out and gives him his old class ring so that he can make it official. And Danny does plan to give it to her once he's defeated Technus. Danny sneaks into Axion again to track Technus down, and while he's sneaking around, he overhears Valerie and her dad having their own painful father-daughter conversation about Danny, and she admits that she likes him a lot. Maybe enough to give up hunting ghosts. The conversation is ended when they overhear Danny trying to stop Technus, and while he pleads with them to trust him, Technus gives her a new ghost hunting suit and escapes to the satellite computer he's been hacking into. Danny chases after him and Valerie follows suit. The two fight in the upper atmosphere while Technus takes control of the planet, and Danny ends up seriously hurting Valerie. Furious at what he's let happen to the girl he loves, he makes one last desperate attack on Technus and destroys the satellite with him inside, and hitches a ride with Valerie back to Amity Park without her being aware. The next day at school, Danny resolves to give Valerie the ring and ask her to be his girlfriend, hoping she'll say yes and give up ghost hunting, sparing him from having to balance his two relationships with her. Before he can, though, Valerie tells him that her life has gotten too complicated for them to be anything more than friends until she takes care of something very important. She kisses him goodbye and walks off, putting her ghost suit back on, sparing one last look back at him before steeling herself to hunt ghosts with a renewed passion and desire for vengeance. This episode sees the romance between Valerie and Danny finally blossom and immediately wither on the vine. Valerie's conflicting feelings for Danny reach their peak, loving Danny Fenton enough to give up ghost hunting to be with him, but thinking so low of Danny Phantom that she now believes that he's a cold-blooded killer. Unfortunately, that inner conflict that had been building since the first season finally reaches its breaking point, and Valerie goes from being a friend and potential ally to a staunch enemy. Her budding romance arc with Danny has nearly reached its ultimate conclusion, and there's any number of ways that the writers could choose to conclude it, setting up perfectly for the next Valerie episode to send both her and Danny down new captivating character arcs in Season 3. But that's exactly the problem. There isn't a next episode. Well, okay, I suppose that's not entirely true. There are 3 more episodes where we see Valerie, but none of them progress this character arc that Danny and Valerie have together. The closest we get is the next episode she's in, Double Cross My Heart. This episode starts with Danny, Sam, and Tucker eating at the Nasty Burger, with Danny sighing longingly while staring at Valerie working the cash register. And that's it. She clocks out of her shift and leaves, and we don't see her anymore for the rest of the episode. From there, a foreign exchange student comes in and flusters Sam, and the rest of the episode is about Danny being jealous over her having a new crush. The other 2 episodes are the last 2 episodes of the entire show, and neither develop Valerie's relationship with either of Danny's persona or do anything new with their dynamic. So while it's not true that this is the last episode we see Valerie in, considering what we get of her from then on, it may as well be. And that's such a shame, as the arc that Valerie had undergone up to that point was genuinely very well done. It's just missing its resolution that would have allowed for the characters to move on to their next arcs. And honestly, that resolution could have been worked into the Season 2 finale with hardly any changes made to the 2-parter structure. The Season 2 finale of Danny Phantom, Reality Trip, has Danny's secret identity revealed to the entire world while fighting Freak Show, a ghost-envying ringmaster who's gathered together all the parts of the Reality Gauntlet. Think a discount version of Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet from Marvel. While fighting Freak Show, Danny, Sam, and Tucker managed to remove the gems from the gauntlet, psychically sending them to all the places they most wanted to travel to over their summer vacation. In response, Freak Show kidnaps their family members and demands that they find the lost gems and return them to him if they ever want to see their families again. It's not immediately apparent how Valerie can tie into this adventure, but two details about her character that have already been established by this point in the series can connect the dots. The first of which is that Valerie is interested in hunting the supernatural. Sam only knew how to remove the gems of the reality gauntlet because she had been looking into Freak Show and stumbled on a book about the gauntlet. When Valerie's life first fell apart because of ghosts, she started researching them, learning whatever she could and even pretending to take interest in Tucker so she could get closer to the Fentons' lab. As Vlad said earlier in this season, Valerie is a genuinely impressive talent at ghost hunting, so it makes sense that she'd have kept studying them to hone her skills. It's hardly a stretch from there to think she might have learned about the gauntlet, especially when Freak Show has terrorized her home before. The second detail requires much less explaining to connect the dots. Valerie is a fan of the band Dumpty Humpty. Valerie had bought tickets to the Dumpty Humpty concert before her family fell on hard times and had to sell them off to help cover expenses. Danny's fight with Freak Show happened at a televised Dumpty Humpty concert, which is why his identity became public knowledge so quickly. It makes sense that Valerie would have been at home watching the concert when the fight began, and would likely not have left her apartment before the secret was revealed. So imagine Valerie's position here. There's a ghost that she feels destroyed her life, who posed as a hero that just wants to help people while he did it. She decides that she needs to get revenge on him however she can, and that decision leads her to this boy that she used to think was a loser, but slowly she starts to see more sides of him, consider him a friend, and then more. She likes this boy a lot, but she's still focused on protecting her home from ghosts, especially the one that ruined her life, who at this point has tricked most of the people in town into thinking he's actually there to save them. She desperately needs to catch this ghost before he does whatever he's trying to do, but she likes this boy enough to give up on all that. Until the ghost attacks her in her home and she's given the means to destroy him for good. So she gives up on what she has with the boy and commits herself to her quest for vengeance. Then she learns that the ghost and the boy are one and the same. She learns that Danny Fenton is Danny Phantom, that he was lying to her every step of the way, that now he's wanted by the government and his family is being held hostage by a man who's going to kill them unless Danny give him the power to take over the entire world. How could Valerie possibly process this? She needs to help him, she needs to make him pay, she needs to do a million things and she doesn't know what. But one thing is for sure, she needs to find him. And since we've established for this hypothetical that Valerie knows how the gauntlet works, she'd know exactly how to do that. Valerie knew that Danny wanted to be an astronaut, so it would be easy for her to piece together that he'd have sent the gems to Cape Canaveral Space Center. Instead of Danny needing to escape the guys in white, he's confronted by a furious and conflicted Valerie who won't let him leave without some sort of confrontation playing out. I won't get too fanfiction-y as the specific details of this scene aren't as important as it happening at all. The broad strokes would be Danny trying to convince Valerie he's not a villain, he just needs to save his family before he can deal with Freak Show. The two fight, and Danny escapes with the gem, leaving Valerie unsure of what to do next. The rest of the episode honestly could play out largely the same as it normally does. I understand Valerie isn't a main character of Danny Phantom, and this wouldn't be changing that, just maintaining her status as a recurring rival for Danny. Valerie was absolutely an important character in the first two seasons of Danny Phantom, and an important character deserves to have their arc given a proper resolution. That resolution would come in the final sequence of the episode, Danny's confrontation with Freak Show. I don't think much needs to happen differently here, just that Valerie is present and trying to help Danny save the day again, but this time knowing who Danny really is. You can do a lot with very little here. Nothing would need to be said between the two teens for the point to be made. Valerie may have misgivings about Danny Phantom, but she's choosing to put those misgivings aside and put her faith in Danny Fenton. And for a brief moment, things are great. Until Danny gets his hands on the reality gauntlet. Now, when Danny tries to erase the knowledge of his secret identity from everyone's minds, Valerie remembers. There could be a couple reasons for why, the easiest of which being that her new suit lets her somewhat resist the gauntlet's powers. We see that Danny is somewhat able to resist it during his fight with Freak Show, and this new suit was made by a ghost, so it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that it would work the same way. Again, the details on how it happens aren't as important here as it is that it happened. Valerie doesn't forget who he is, but she's supposed to. And when she realizes that this happened, her anger comes right back. She trusted Danny, despite her every instinct telling her that she shouldn't. She put her fears aside and trusted him. And he didn't trust her. The same thing that happened every single day, the entire time the two were becoming friends, and then more than friends. She trusted Danny, and he never really trusted her. And the hurt of that realization gets twisted into confirmation that she was right to be suspicious of the Phantom. Why else would he want his identity to stay secret unless he really was evil all along? But she remembers who he is, and she won't let him get away with it again. Valerie's romance with Danny would be done. Who he is to her is set in stone, at least for now, and from here she can go on to be a more active antagonist for Danny, an especially difficult one to reconcile with because she's one that he created. If he had been more trusting, she could have been an ally, a friend, a partner. But as much as he liked her, he couldn't treat her as an equal and show her the trust she needed, so she turned on him when she learned the truth for herself. Every fight the two have from then on would throw his mistakes back in his face and force him to confront who he is and how he treats people, making sure he doesn't hurt someone the way he hurt Valerie again. Some of these story beats might sound a bit familiar, and there's a good reason for that. The storyline I'm suggesting for Valerie is pretty close to the storyline she went through in the 2023 graphic novel Danny Phantom: A Glitch in Time. While the details obviously aren't a one-to-one match, A Glitch in Time sees Valerie have her worst fears confirmed about Danny Phantom, still work with Danny to save the day from a greater evil, and somehow retain her memory of who Danny Phantom really is in a world that's been forced to forget. It's not a perfect setup, but the writers absolutely did the best they could while staying true to what happened in Danny Phantom up to that point. This graphic novel actually gives Valerie something to do, and sets her up to fill a completely new role in any future graphic novels the team may write. Like, for example, the follow-up graphic novel Danny Phantom: Fair Game that, assuming I got this essay finished in time, releases today. While I can't speak to how helpful the graphic novel will be in resolving Valerie's character, as I don't know what exactly the novel is going to be about, pretty much all the promotional material released so far has featured Valerie heavily, and it's more than likely she'll be getting her long overdue confrontation with Danny about the secrets he's kept from her. Obviously, I haven't read it yet, but judging from the quality of writing on display in A Glitch in Time, I'm very hopeful that we'll get some scenes that pick up where the show left off and finally give a satisfying conclusion to the relationship between Danny Phantom and Valerie Gray. And it's wonderful that that's finally happening, but it also shouldn't have fallen to new writers to fix what went wrong in the Danny Phantom writing room roughly 20 years earlier. I don't want to talk too much about the behind the scenes of the show because it's largely speculation and I don't want to spread what could just be misinformation if I can help it. Suffice to say, someone in charge of this show just didn't care to utilize the character of Valerie Gray to her full extent, which is to the show's detriment when the little bit they did do with her was so well received that even now people wish they had done more with her, and are rectifying that mistake in whatever ways they can. Valerie Gray was such a fascinating character to me growing up. She's honestly very well written for everything that we did get. I'm in no way criticizing the writing and development that she did get. You could honestly make the argument that she's one of the best developed characters across the entire show, especially when you consider how few other characters in the show do get developed further. But that good characterization only serves to make the lack of a resolution to her arc all the more frustrating. The show spent 5 episodes across the front half of the series making us care about her and Danny's dynamic, get more and more interested in what turn the two will take next, only for it to cut off right before a natural conclusion. Even amongst people who don't care for her, the main complaint seems to be that her character arc was too rushed, and people would have appreciated seeing her more if she had gotten more screen time to work with. Cutting her story short like they did was a disservice, one that I'm grateful to finally be seeing dealt with. Thank you so much for watching. Do you agree that Valerie was underutilized, or do you think that the storyline she had was satisfying? Let me know in the comments. I love reading what you guys say down there. While you're at it, if you've watched all this way, consider leaving a like and subscribing. I know it's been a while since I've posted anything here. No one told me that moving in with multiple people coming from out of state could be a difficult process. But hey, things should be smoothing out soon, so it shouldn't be too long before my next essay. If you want to help make things even smoother and get to see videos a bit early, plus some behind the scenes stuff, consider supporting me on Patreon or Ko-Fi. Subscribers there, as well as on Twitch, get their names put in the credits at the end of the video. Also, maybe you like my videos enough to check out another one, like this one right here. Either way, thank you again, and have a great day.